What's good, y'all, and welcome to this Valentine's edition of Should You Summon. Behind me, we have the current banners, which are going to be DIAO, Astrid, Hex, TWYLA, Deimos, Lightlock, Norvras, and then LUBUHU and Iovar. Those are the current banners. You can currently only see them in the in-game news section instead of the proper event tab, but these are the confirmed banners with the confirmed epic. So let's get straight into it and start off with the main attraction, DIAO herself. Let's address the elephant in the room, and this is something that not only pertains to her, but also pertains to LUBUHU. And that is the fact that the True Devotion pane, which reads, obtain LUBUHU in the hero gallery and unlock the bonus effect. As long as an ally is in the basic attack range, reduces AoE damage taken by 30%. Is conflicting, but on this one I will have to take an L. I guess I wanted LUBUHU to be too useful to an extent, to put too much value into DIAO, and for that I apologize. And the reason is this only pertains to her. If you have a LUBUHU, it is confirmed from the devs that this was always the way it was intended to be, and that is that if you have her and an ally in her range, she is going to be taking 30% less damage. Now, why is that such a big change in comparison to everybody in her range takes 30% less damage? That has to do with my guy over here, Thirsty. So, Thirsty has the ability to give AoE damage reduction to everyone in his range. This one would be a 25%. Hers could have been a 30%, basically dethroning a Thirsty and, let's say, for example, opening up a lot of possibilities in Guild Wars 2 or huge survivability in big AoE damage stages like, let's say, the Healer Codex. But this isn't the case anymore. Thirsty is still the GOAT when it comes to AoE damage reduction. He's still the only one currently to provide us with this high of a AoE damage reduction. He's still going to be incredibly viable, incredibly useful in Guild Wars 2, almost necessary in Guild Wars 2 if you really want to hit 120k and also get a triple S on the Healer Codex respectively. So Thirsty is still the king. And first is also the reason why this DIAO / LUBUHU bond skill really isn't all that important. Unless you do not own a Thirsty, this is pretty minimal. This is pretty unimportant because she's going to get a 25% reduction rather than a 30% reduction regardless if you already have a Thirsty in the team who you're going to, for example, for Guild Wars 2 are going to be bringing anyway. So this bond skill basically on the effect of DIAO is pretty much non-existent. You don't really need to care about it too much unless you're talking about not owning a Thirsty. So bond skill already negative point for LUBUHU. DIAO, she could have been super incredible with this one, but it would have also required a LUBUHU, which would have been, I guess, the next problem, require an ancient exclusive unit to make her super overpowered. But yeah, so that's the whole bond skill situation. Everything is written the way it's supposed to be. Could be read both ways, but it is just her getting the reduction. Okay, now let's quickfire go through her kit and talk a bit about her strong points, her weak points, everything in between. So, she naturally increases her healing bonus by 50%. So, for example, here we would go from 45 all the way to 67. Nothing too crazy, but obviously if you had, for example, 100, you would be getting 50 additional. Next up, when deployed, she starts with the healing stance, and during the healing stance, she gains 4% healing effect every 2 seconds up to 40%. So she gains an extra 90% healing effect if she is in the healing stance for 20 seconds. During the Song of Sorrow, which is her second stance that she can swap to by triggering her ultimate, she swaps into an attack stance that continuously applies inspiration. Furthermore, in that stance, she increases her own attack by 2% every 2 seconds, reaching a maximum of 20% post-deployment attack increase after 20 seconds. So, this leaves us with the two things, and that is, how does her attack speed work? Simply speaking, she has an attack speed of 6. And with, for example, 200 extra attack speed, you get it down to a 3.7. What that means is that within a 3.7 second window, she is going to be attacking 3 times. No matter how high your attack speed is, it does not make a difference in the Song of Sorrow stance, because this inspiration is continuous, permanently active. So 25% inspiration. Obviously, it is even less than half of what a Dolores has. A Dolores at A1 goes up to 60%, so she's not even at 30%. But that is the important part. It is a 100% uptime, no conditions, as long as you are in the Song of Sorrow stance, as well as getting the 20% attack post-deployment. So then you also have this Bittersweet Dreams right here, where within 15 seconds after switching stances, the basic attack inherits half the effects of the previous stance. So, for example, if you are in the inspiration stance and then you swap to the healing stance for the next 15 seconds, even during the healing stance, you're still going to be applying a 12.5% inspiration in a sense. But honestly, this whole swapping around, in most cases, I don't see it as that relevant. If you want her to heal, you're going to have her in the healing stance. And if you want your team to deal damage, you're going to have to find a way to make her work in the Sorrow stance. There's also, then lastly, right here, this Thorned Rose, where during the healer stance, she continuously applies 20% physical and magical damage reduction to all allies in range, which is indeed still a form of damage reduction, not to be underestimated, and can be combined with Fercy, because she applies damage reduction, while Fercy applies AoE damage reduction. So there is still some viability in the fact that during her healing stance she does that, and during her inspiration stance she applies these ignore defense and ignore magic rest to the highest attack units. Now the unit obviously everybody is going to be comparing her to is Dolores. So straight up the difference is Dolores always heals and Dolores only provides inspiration during ultimate, while she either heals or inspires. So for example, if you have her in a Sorrow stance, you gotta keep in mind your healers need to be able to keep your team alive unless you decide to swap her stance and sacrifice a bit of inspiration for, let's say, a burst of healing and then to swap back again. Next difference is going to be you have these 20% physical and magical damage reductions, as well as the potential penetration increase. Those are the main differences between the two. And now let's really talk about where you use these. So, simply speaking, her content. The longer the content is, the longer the duration of the content, the stronger DIAO charm becomes, because the permanent inspiration is going to be obviously able to have a higher uptime at 100% and stay active longer and influence more. The shorter the piece of content, or the shorter the amount of damage you need for certain scenarios, like for example Guild Boss 1, you want to break a shield. You are barely able to break a shield. Getting a 45 or a 60% inspiration for 20 seconds, for example the duration of a Guild Boss shield, is stronger than having a 25% for a duration. So this is basically sustained / long piece content inspiration booster. Think Guild Boss 1 if you can already break the shields. Think Guild Boss 2. Think potential campaign stages with boss fights. Think Codex. Those are all of these like drawn out 5 to 6 to 7 minute stages. And she comes in clutch when it is like these burst ones. For example, again, Guild Boss 1 shield break. Void Drift, right? In Void Drift, bursting down a Lucia, bursting down a Celine, bursting down a Calypso, it is always easier that within that 20-second window, because you are getting a bigger inspiration boost, which leads us to the next thing, and that is rather than content, it's going to be units. Certain units benefit more and certain units benefit less from either of them. So, for example, a Silas, ultimate 20 seconds, Dolores boost 22 seconds. He can perfectly ult together with a Dolores, boosting his ultimate totally that would be, for example, a perfect fitting example. And then something that is super obvious, but I'll name it anyway, is Ingrid. Ingrid's synergy with Diao-chan is obviously unmatched because she is putting out her biggest amount of damage basically the whole time. And you can't really afford to time a Dolores to, for example, a solar mode or a solar flare or a stellar flare, lunar flare, is that the name? Yeah, star shower, right? You can't really proceed to time it there, but if you have a Diao-chan on the field, you can be rest assured that every single one of these actions is going to be boosted. And yeah, so Diao-chan favors characters that either have short not just short ultimates, but short or quick ultimates, or a whole lot of ultimates, right? That's what you really favor with her. You really favor units that can ult a whole lot, like think Salazar, Wukong, Kigiri, if you have him properly with Rage Region and such. So these three would, for example, be able to ult outside of what a normal Dolores would be able to provide inspiration-wise. And another point that is a bit interesting, for certain scenarios, would have to be very long ultimates. Very long ultimates, like, for example, a Zilla2 at A3 has a ultimate duration of 45 seconds. Dolores only provides inspiration for 22 seconds, so unless you have a Laurel on the field as well as Rage Region and then double Dolores, you are not going to be able to boost a whole Zilla2 ultimate with just a Dolores. So a whole lot of ultimates from characters or very long ultimates get favored by Diao-chan, while Dolores is kind of in the middle of it, where she really wants characters that gain ultimates similar to herself. Also, someone that is really going to be benefiting from a Diao-chan has to be a Hex. Keep in mind, this Hex ultimate with his A3 can go up to 65 seconds, which is 3 times the duration of a Dolores ultimate. So yeah, but yeah, what you really want for a Dolores is something where you have like a 20-second ultimate. Think like a Silas, you activate it alongside a Dolores, you boost everything, and then you burst, then everybody cools down, everybody gets their rage back, and you do a burst again, and then everybody gets their rage back, and you do a burst again. Also, because of the fact that she has this permanent active inspiration, everyone that normally also does a lot of damage with their basic attacks, like for example the Nightmare factions, where a Arrogance or a Lust or a Wrath or other units like that also have very powerful basic attacks outside of their ultimate, profit a whole lot. And then, while we're already here, again, auto ultimates. Auto ultimates are the easiest to think with a Diao-chan because she is permanently active. So I hope I kind of made the differences clear between what you're going to be looking for in a Diao-chan and in a Diao-chan and in a Dolores. I still heavily recommend all of you to at least pick up one of those Diao-chans, and then just to finish this off, let's have a look at the Awakenings. I would recommend every one of us to pick up at least one, and then if you can manage it, or if luck wills you, getting a second one would be incredibly huge, because the range increase changes from, let's just simplify it again, from a Dolores range to a Aelin range, right? So this could be your inspiration range if you do pull her twice, or have her twice, or even potentially use a unpolished soulstone on this unit. Next up, you would have the A3, where you're getting a 25% magical and physical damage reduction, and also you are boosting 3 allies in penetration rather than 2. And then the A5 is really where it comes into play that it would make sense for you to switch. And that's because during the Serenade of Hope, you're getting a burst heal of 500%. So let's say you swap from Inspiration Stance to Healing Stance, burst heal 500%. And when you swap so from the Healing Stance to the Song of Sorrow, you're getting a 10% rage regen. So over 5 seconds, you're going to be restoring 2% per second, which is the highest rage restore in the entire game. I think maybe tied with TWYLA. So this is going to override anything. So even if you run a Eloin, which is something which is going to happen in most scenarios, you're still going to get an extra 5% rage simply by swapping here, and you want to do that every 30 seconds. So it would pretty much look something like this. You are in Song of Sorrow, you swap to healing stats, you swap to Song of Sorrow again, and then after 30 seconds you do it once more. That would be the whole concept of this. So A0, pretty powerful. A1, already amazing. A3, nice, but not necessary. And A5, if you have an A5, you have an A5. And I wouldn't really need to tell you to get her to A5. Huh? Okay, so now that we've talked about all these other guys, let's talk about another banner alongside of Astrid and DIAO-chan. But we're gonna try to keep it brief, try to keep it simple. And I guess before we do jump there, let's briefly talk about Astrid. Honestly, Astrid is amazing. Everybody that still doesn't have her, you are blessed to be summoning on this banner. What does she do? She does 30% AoE. She does huge AoE damage during her ultimate. She has an incredible range, even during her ultimate. She just hits like a truck. She has a perfect talent for just striking twice. So yeah, Astrid's overpowered. Which leaves us with, for the moment, the easier banner to talk about, and that is gotta be the Hex banner. Hex is overpowered. Hex only becomes more ridiculous if you have the Sutra of Capris. I don't really need to tell you how good Hex is. Everybody of you should already know how good Hex is. If you don't have an Hex, it is an even easier choice to try to pity manipulate here and then pull your legendary there in the hopes of getting Hex. Yeah, the way he works, obviously he draws cards, he does a lot of stuff, he burns, he slows, he stuns. His awakenings are incredible. The A1 is strong, the A3 is even stronger, and the A5 is at least on par when it comes to the A3. Keep in mind, you really want that artifact, or he's not going to be performing the same as anybody else's. Which brings us to, where is you, TWYLA. So, TWYLA, alongside of Hex, another top tier unit when it comes to single target damage. She does a lot of instances of hits, for example, with this Deranged Blade, where she does 12 instances of 20% damage. She's all about building up penetration by ulting a whole lot, which you can see, for example, it stacks up to 80%, which again is a good fit with a DIAO-chan, because you are not going to be able to guarantee a Dolores all of these ultimates that easily. And also, if you already have a Hex, picking up a TWYLA, or the other way around, if you already have a TWYLA and picking up a Hex, is a really good idea, because this bond skill on TWYLA's side is really overpowered. Why did we really skip about the Hexes one? Because this is not that important. What happens here is, whenever he gets attacked, for every 40 seconds, he gains a 3-second invisibility, and now he also gains a 40% shield. So he gains a shield of 40% attack for 10 seconds. And while TWYLA is on the field, his cost is reduced from 12 to 8. So, TWYLA, why is TWYLA that strong? And that is because if you do own a Hex, you reduce her first deployment cost all the way from 17 down to 11. And then every time Hex draws a card, which happens really frequently, TWYLA permanently increases her crit damage by 5%, and at 12 cards, that's already 60%. So you're looking at a unit that does single target damage, has a chance of doing already 240% damage, as well as inflicting bleed every time she attacks. This chance also increases every time she ults, up to a 40% chance. During each ultimate, she grants an extra 10% penetration, and then in her ultimate, she increases her damage, reduces her attack intervals, so she attacks more often. She also changes the Ranged Blade from 12 to 18 instances, and also deals 200% damage twice to one enemy immediately. Which leaves us with the Awakenings, and the Awakenings for TWYLA are actually pretty simple. A1 is overpowered, A2 is nice, A3 is strong, but nothing too amazing, A4 is whatever, and the A5 you can pretty much skip, because what it does is, upon taking damage for the first time, becomes immune to death, and also increases her damage by 100%. Important to note here is this 100% damage increase only is for the 6-second duration while where she's immune to death. So if you, for example, have a Valeria, you can pretty much already do what happens there and that's pretty much TWYLA for you. Deimos overpowered, Malrus Fusion, Lightlock Fusion aren't really something interesting if you don't have a Deimos. Another reason to pull. Which finally brings us to the only, you could say, orange banner. And that is the Iovar LUBUHU banner. So let's bring out the obvious and then end it on a sad note. So, obviously, Iovar is overpowered. Iovar is really, really strong. And if you had to talk about like the strongest 5 lords, it would probably be Kratos, Ingrid, Voldron, Torador, Rhaegar. They're kind of the same thing. And then you would have to name Iovar. One of the reasons why he's so strong is obviously his Lord skill, where when deployed, faction team members increase their damage by 15% every 20 seconds. This is working while he's on the bench. If he's on the bench and you place a Silas, after 60 seconds, Silas increases his own damage by 45%. He also has the strongest Lord bonus in the entire game, which is the extra 1-tile range increase, which is so versatile and so useful in so many situations. The Piercer's Lord bonus is just ridiculous. Outside of that, you have a 2x attack of 60%. Whenever you use the ultimate, you also increase, you reduce the attack interval, so attack more often, you change the basic attack. If you also consume the flying swords, which is a special talent mechanic, this thing just lasts longer. After an allied marksman casts the ultimate, he gains flying sword and also his attacks ignore defense. And then the flying swords is pretty much just him shooting the flying swords. Depending on how many he has, he shoots more flying swords. That's Iovar simply speaking for you. He gains these flying swords like this. Awakening wise, the A1 is pretty minor. Not actually. The A1 is actually pretty decent. It can give you a lot of security in making those rotations. The A3 is a bit minor, and the A5 giving you 12 swords upon deployed. Very situational. But yeah, his A1 is really good. His A2, while increasing damage to airborne units, isn't all that important unless you're GVG focused. So again, Iovar top 5 lords. Iovar shouldn't be the reason you don't pull on this banner. And that reason probably has to come in right here. So, LUBUHU, my guy. Let's talk about the, you could say, problem child of this banner. And that has to be LUBUHU. So, number one, we talked about it in the beginning. The bond skill isn't nearly as strong as thought to be. And then now on the other hand, if you do have a DIAO charm and his bond skill, it basically just allows him to increase the state upon first deployment, just upon first deployment, by a further 15 seconds rather than another 15 seconds. So you're basically doubling the duration of his first deployment. So the way he works at the moment is obviously every 12 seconds he consumes HP. He uses that to deal Chaos Strike. Chaos Strike deals 320% damage to up to 10 enemies. And if he is deployed, right, he has a independent health bar. Now, the way this works is people say this is a shield, but by no means is this a shield. It is still a health bar and it still counts as his HP. If he, during deep descent, falls below, let's say 60% for the chaotic faction buff right here, where it states that the more HP you lose, the more damage they get. This works. It is not a shield. It is a separate HP bar. He basically has 2 HP bars. One of them is hidden and the other one is then the main one until he leaves deep descent. If he goes below 60, 30, whatever percent that triggers certain effects, they still trigger. It is still his HP bar. He just doesn't die if this HP bar hits 0. So what exactly happens? When this HP bar times out completely, rather than dying, he just swaps into his base stance and restores 50% HP. This is the important part. When he, let's say he enters with 40% HP into deep descent, that means he's going to, after leaving deep descent, regenerate 50% HP, which is, I guess you could say, a bit counterproductive when it comes to the whole chaotic philosophy, but it also might give him some much needed survivability. Okay, so That's it. And then you have the 3-tile range going up to a 4-tile range. Going up to a 4-tile range with the A1, where you do 120% damage to up to 5 enemies. You have Lapse of Reason, where if he is not in his Deep Descent stance, which he gains during his ultimate or upon first deployment, he restores rage when attacking. The less max damage or max percent max of HP he takes. So if someone hits him for 40%, he regenerates 4% rage. Both effects double when the current starting HP is below 50%. So if at 49% he takes 20% damage, he generates 8% of rage. And then you have Power Hungry, where if his HP, not just his main HP, but also his Deep Descent HP, is below 65%, he increases his damage by 30% for each ally within 2 tiles around him. That is below 65%, he gains extra damage. Overall, a lot of extra damage. Allies HP drops below 65 for the first time, he gains 30% rage. So then you have this arena one, and now we kind of come to the problem child. And the problem child is LUBUHU's ultimate. The reason why this could be considered the problem child is because this first sentence right here is if you trigger the ultimate at 100%. If you trigger the ultimate at 100%, he just enters into Deep Descent. That's it. He just enters for 25 seconds into, once again, this overlay HP bar where he starts at 65%, and every time Chaos Strike is triggered, it also inflicts slow. That Chaos Strike would then, for example, take him from 65 to 50%, and that's the way his kit works. Now, if you want the rest of this ultimate, all that stuff right here, you would have to wait to 200% ult charge, which means that if you trigger it at 200%, he immediately enters into Deep Descent. That Deep Descent is 10 seconds longer, so around a 40% duration increase, and then he also gains a 40% attack increase, as well as reducing the Chaos Strike trigger interval by 3 seconds. So Chaos Strike in general, whenever he goes below 65%, Chaos Strike loses 2 seconds, and naturally it's every 12 seconds. So during a Deep Strike 200% ultimate, you are at an every 9-second interval, and then if he does go below 65, it goes down to a 7-second interval. And here's kind of where the problems come in, and that is, it's just not enough. He doesn't use Chaos Strike enough, and Chaos Strike doesn't do enough damage to justify taking so long and being so hard to get. Let's have a look at Valdron just for comparison, where you have Chaotic Annihilation, which obviously it's not an AoE, it's a single target attack, but Chaotic Annihilation has a higher multiplier than the 320%, but he triggers it on a basic attack chance. And also the lower his HP is, the higher the chance. He has a 50% chance. Every second attack does something that LUBUHU only truly does throughout his ultimate reliably. And then if you take a look at Valdron's ultimate, I don't know why it's bugged like this, but we all know Valdron's ultimate, where he gets massive attack, massive crit damage, overall powerful state, and also vulnerability. It's just, for the fact that his ultimate costs 200, he just doesn't do enough. That is the issue with LUBUHU. And also another point is, he doesn't have a defined space to be used in, because Ardea exists. Ardea, even at A0, has 1 tile more range than LUBUHU. She already is way better at reducing her own HP personally. Her ultimate increases her attack by 50% rather than his 40%. And also she does this extra thing right here through triggering her talent. And then you have to look at the base stats, where she has 8,000 attack, while LUBUHU, even at A3, only has 5,400. That's almost a 50% attack difference, which means that she has 50% attack less and does a 10% less attack boost, while she has 50% base attack more and gets a 10% stronger attack boost. Also, this ultimate, the attack boost happens every 600 rage, while his only happens every 1600 rage. Now, even through all of this, with all these deficits, he's still almost equal to Ardea. Almost equal. They are basically the same, get used in the same niche pieces of content. That's another point. There isn't a dedicated piece of content where you would be like, ah, damn, I wish I had a LUBUHU to use here. Because you have what? You have like the Conqueror Codex and then maybe the Epilogue, but you can also deal with the Epilogue with, for example, a Valeria or a tank plus Volker or a Cerberus. So it's not like you really truly need them. The reason why Ardea is so cool is because the stats are that high. She looks sick as hell. She's hot. And also she has a really unique kit with an incredible range. While LUBUHU, I guess he's just late to the party. If he were here since the beginning of the game instead of Ardea, he would also be one of our most favorite units. And then were Ardea to come out now, it would be the same discussion of, yeah, okay, Ardea is great, but she also takes the same space as a LUBUHU does. So what can she really do? But the conclusion would have to be, oh, but Ardea is stronger than LUBUHU. So long story short, if you do not have a Ardea, LUBUHU can fit exactly the same roles. If you ever wished you had an Ardea to fit a certain role, LUBUHU can fit that role. And yeah, he could have done more. He could have been stronger. His main focus, and that's also something the developers, I guess, intended, is PvP content. You're not going to see him in any real PvE content. The only places where he could shine would be, for example, single target / AoE arena, as well as GVG, because GVG, think about it, he is pretty nasty, right? He has deep descent where he has 2 separate HP bars. He shields when he leaves the fatal state. He has awakenings like, for example, right here with an execute, which is a bit iffy, but if you really are this kind of whale, when he is in deep descent, no matter if it's the 25 or the 35 second state, every time he dies, he only loses 5 seconds of deep descent. So there's still a very non-zero chance that he's going to be so annoying in GVG to be worth it. But yeah, he's intended for PvP content, kind of the same way an Ardea is. And maybe everything changes with the release of RTA, so real-time arena. But for the moment, honestly, banner-wise, there is a reason this banner is orange, while every other banner is green and good to go. Peace!